In Genesis chapter 1, we saw that man and woman were together the singular image of God. And we established the fact that starting out in Scripture, there is a certain equality inherent with being a man or a woman, such that men are not more important than women and women are not more important than men. And we also saw like there is a codependence. Men cannot exist without women and women cannot exist without men. Chapter 1 in Genesis doesn't draw any distinctions for us. I think Moses does that on purpose as he records this account of creation. Now in Genesis chapter 2, we receive a different account of creation. It is not contradictory, it is different, right? Just because something is different doesn't make it contradictory in nature. So we receive a different creation story. This time it's like Moses has zoomed in specifically on the creation of the woman. So the woman gets an entire chapter and the man gets a couple verses in Genesis chapter 1, and the woman gets Genesis chapter 2. There's a lot being done leading up to the creation of the woman. And everything that's being done has to do, I think, with the image of God that is placed upon humanity as a whole, the man and the woman together, the singular image of God. So most of us probably know the story, even if we haven't been in church. God raises man up from the dirt of the earth. He breathes life into it. It becomes a living being, and he is the image of God. God tells him, name all the creatures here in the garden. So this man names the creatures of the garden, and he does not find a helper suitable for him. So God causes him to fall asleep. A deep sleep overcomes him. God carves his skin open, pulls it back, takes a rib, crafts a woman from this rib, sews the man back up, and he awakes and he sees this woman. He says, what a hottie. No, bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. At last she shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Now, in this story, we get the main distinction there is between men and women. And this distinction isn't physical, though we can perceive physical distinctions, physiological distinctions, mental distinctions, emotional distinctions, distinctions when it comes to the way men and women think and solve problems and do work. We can perceive those distinctions. This text doesn't get at any of that. Instead, it lists another sort of distinction. The man represents God. And remember, this is all about the image of God here. And out of man, woman is taken. So there's a distinction. And when the man says, bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh, he's saying, at last, here is someone after my kind, a suitable helper for me, and none of the other animals could cut it. This woman is above all else, the pinnacle of all the things I have named. Later in Genesis chapter 3, the woman is called the mother of all the living. She represents in this divine, historical, very literal thing that happened, but divine living parable, the woman represents humanity. Now, Paul gets at this in his letters, 1 Corinthians and in Ephesians, when he equates the man and the woman and their relationship together to the relationship between Christ and his church. And he says those are necessarily connected. So when God creates man and all of his masculinity, he's creating a being that represents him on the earth. That's why God, who's the only one, by the way, who can choose to go by the pronoun he wants rightly, chooses to be masculine when it comes to our perception, right? He puts the picture of himself upon the earth, this living parable, man. And then from man, you remember in Genesis chapter 1, God created humanity according to his kind. Now he takes man and from man's kind creates woman. It's this divine parable, this image of God. And then the woman becomes the crown of beauty in God's creation. Thus, giving the woman like the highest place in the order of creation. While men have the responsibility to rule and to teach, the woman actually becomes this object of redemption. The one who gets to live out the faith and be a picture of pure faith and beauty. And we see the man like look at this woman and go, wow, at last, bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. We see a picture of the way God feels when he creates humanity as a whole. Like God is doing all this on purpose. And it's not about us getting what we think we deserve. No, it's all a picture of who he is. And then the woman, she's created as a suitable helper for the man. And in this, God doesn't need a helper. But he chose to place his image upon the earth and create a suitable helper for him as he fills creation with his image, with human people, to his glory alone. So even in this illustration, this divine, quite literal, historic illustration, God takes the rib from Adam and crafts the woman, and he crafts the woman out of man's kind. That's a picture of him creating us in Genesis chapter 1, like Genesis 2 is doing this on purpose. Moses is doing this on purpose. And the woman being the man's suitable helper is the perfect picture of humanity and us being God's suitable helper, not necessary helper like he needs us, but suitable in order for God to accomplish his plan and his purpose in creation, which honestly, that's encouraging to me. Like people do have a high place in the creation order, and God values human life, and he values human people, and he values our health, and he cares for people. He has much grace and much mercy because he has chosen to create us his suitable helpers. And when he creates humanity, particularly when he creates the woman, he's painting a picture of all this so that we might understand who he is and what he is doing. So men have a purpose in this, and women have a purpose in this according to God's design, not our own.